You are listening to the all-new Culture Cast. We hope you have a spooktacular time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest edition of the all-new Culture Cast. I am the Gorehound, and with me today is
Nick,
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very good.
Are
So
you?
today we're going to be talking a little bit about horror movies, just in general, and what makes a good horror movie.
That
So,
we are.
so how does that sound, Nick?
It sounds great. Kyle, I wanted to do this topic with you for a long time now. Several years back, Zach and I did a similar topic when we were doing the Culted Organic podcast, and
Oh yeah, the classic.
old school classic. And I liked that episode a lot, but I wanted to definitely revisit the topic because you are the Gorehound. You love
Oh
your
yeah,
horror films, and
self-proclaimed.
yeah, and I felt this would be a great topic for us to talk about, especially now that Halloween is actually this week. So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so excited for it.
have you been watching a lot of horror films?
Not as much as I would have liked. As you know, we just recently got settled into our new apartment about 2 months ago, and been getting everything settled, and our evenings have been pretty packed, and haven't gotten around to watching a whole lot. But I'm thinking this week I'm gonna catch up with everything, see everything I want to see. So,
I'm hoping to watch sometime this week. What's it called? It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
oh man, yeah, you would watch that.
I like Peanuts. It's not as good as Charlie Brown Christmas, but it still has good parts to it. So
Yeah, gotcha.
But anyway, let's. When it comes to horror, Gorehound, when
Yeah.
it comes to horror, what do you look for in a horror movie?
90% of the movies that I watch have the same exact premise or plot line. It's basically a teen slasher with five teens in usually a small environment, whether it's a cabin in the woods or just some house down the street. But basically, they're just getting five teens are getting slaughtered off with a single girl remaining by some demented monster, and that is just a solid formula that always rings true for me. I mean, I go on Netflix, I look for something where it's like a group of teens are trying to run away from a demented, hillbilly, and I'm like, count me in. That is what I want to watch right now.
It is a proven formula that happens in a lot of films since the slasher movie kind of became really popular in the late 70s, early 80s there.
Right, and there's certainly a lot of genres and genre-bending movies. Yeah, and I mean, they're all fantastic, but when I don't want to think, and I just want to zone out, that's usually what I go for. And I will continue to keep on watching this, but yeah. So how about yourself? What is your favorite premise for a horror movie, would you say?
I don't know if I have a favorite premise per se, but
Yeah.
I definitely am drawn to more of the 1930s and 40s Universal classic monster films. Like
Okay, so it's an older school
the
type.
older ones, yeah. They may not be as quote unquote scary as it is as horror films are today,
hmm
but I do have I love those sorts of films like Frankenstein, Dracula. There's a certain gothic element to it that really appeals to me as a film. And they're classic characters. They constantly get a new treatment for each generation, but I love the black and white, old school Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi sort of
hmm
monster films. There's something, as weird as it sounds, there's something pure about them, pure and innocent. Maybe because it's coming from an older era, but
Yeah, and those movies, their plot lines don't really intermix. They are completely, pure in their premise. They don't really share a whole lot from each other. It's
like Dracula's storyline is so different than Frankenstein's storyline, and I guess it's not to be unexpected because those monster films, many of them were based on pre-existing works or folklore or something. So there's a lot
yeah, I
of
mean, and it's all horror
yeah,
in a sense,
hmm
but it's also different from each other.
yeah. And until they started trying to mash those films up in the late 40s with Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and
Right.
they're trying to be milking the cow dry, whatever cliche you wanna use
Yeah.
there. But I like those movies. I don't know, they're fun. I need to watch more of them this coming week. But
Yeah. And I remember I went through a big Italian horror
that's right, you
film.
are a big fan of the Italian horror
I
movies.
was. I was. It's very weird to talk to people about Italian horror
It's
because
so unique.
right, but I feel that it's so relevant and it really helps you get a better appreciation for how American horror really came to fruition and where it originated from.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm kind of glad that that passed because I can't talk to anybody about Italian horror. And I mean, 'cause everybody knows Dario Argento, but once you start getting into some of the more weird stuff, like the church, the zombie, it's people are it becomes a bit foreign to them, and
Hmm.
I like to watch movies that everybody else is watching. I try to steer towards that just to keep in line with
With
what
popular
modern
trends.
audiences are watching.
No, that's
So.
fair. Was The Cemetery Man? That was an Italian horror, right?
It was by an Italian horror director, Michele Soavi, or however you pronounce it. And I knew that he was I don't know if a protege or some relation to Dario Argento. And yeah, I mean, Cemetery Man is like one of my hands down top five favorite horror films.
I remember you showed me that film. Like you were like, Nick, we are watching this. I'm like, okay. And that movie, that's a very strange film. It
Right.
really
You
is.
have Rupert Everett,
Yeah,
and
he's I'd say a marquee name. People know who he is.
right, but when I thought of him, he's just like a chick flick guy to me.
Well, I think he got his big American debut with the
Big
Julia
fat.
Roberts wedding, the My Best Friend's Wedding,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
where he played Julia Roberts' gay best friend. He kind of was stuck in that genre for a while.
Right, yeah, and that's all that I really thought of him as was that movie. But no, he's in that awesome horror movie. So that's one of those movies that I try to watch every single October. Just it's fantastic.
I pulled up a Wikipedia page, and it's quite fascinating. It's it's actually titled horror film. It's really interesting because I think what fascinates me more about horror films is how they evolved over time. Because you look at horror films at early cinema and
Yeah.
how they've come like over time, like how they've evolved and changed and different topics. Like there's like the supernatural horror, there's the religious horror, which can be blended with supernatural depending on how you look at it,
Hmm.
that eventually turned into the slasher horror, and how different eras had different sort of things to it. Like in the mid 70s, after Jaws came out, which is in some ways considered a horror film,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of had like a lot of like killer animal stories that sort of followed in its wake,
Oh yeah, creature features. I love those.
and which I think eventually evolved into your octopus versus
Yeah.
mega
Uh,
shark or whatever
yeah,
silly.
Sharktopus versus Mega Piranha.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
crazy things like that.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
and then how like in the 90s kind of evolved into more satirical horror, like
Hmm.
things like the Nightmare on Elm Street series became more of a parody of itself than actual serious horror.
Yeah.
And then you had things like Scream come about. Then like the 2000s kind of veered into more
Yeah, once
uh
you started, once I Know What You Did Last Summer, like right after that, you saw the like straight up satirical horror
mhm.
films, like
Then it kind of evolved into more like it went to a totally different, it got, I would say, darker, where there was more emphasis on the torture element and the
yeah, Eli
mutilation.
Roth really came out
Yeah,
and
you had
really
your
brought it about.
Saw and things like that, and it's just fascinating how like tastes change.
Oh yeah, it
And
evolves so
yeah,
much.
so I'm kind of curious, do you think there's been good evolutions of horror or bad evolutions of horror?
Well, we're certainly still seeing a lot of originality
Hmm.
in the horror movies that come about. I know a lot of people are saying, it's all remakes, but it was all remakes even before then.
Hmm.
Frankenstein was originally a book, not an original horror movie.
Hmm.
We're still seeing a lot of originality, and it is very evolved, and everything is very similar to everything that's going on today.
Hmm.
Like right now, everything is zombie.
Yeah,
and it's kind
zombies
of
are huge.
right. And maybe we would have said like in the '90s, like we don't like teen slashers, but now it's we don't like zombies. It's
And I'd say vampires as well.
oh yeah, let's just move on. But no, actually, Dracula. I just rented Dracula Untold, that new
Oh,
release.
I want to watch that.
I'm really only watching it because there was nothing else to watch at the library. I was like, I've seen every single one of these, except this one.
Is it? I think it was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is,
Oh,
but
was it? Oh, I
well,
must have.
it was on my Netflix queue, but I don't know if it's still there because Netflix just lost a bunch of movies. I don't know if that was one of them, but I
Yeah.
should try watching that this week. That'd be a perfect week to watch it.
But no, I looked at the IMDb profile and it was saying that there really hasn't been a Dracula story released for like, what was it, like 10 or 15 years since Dracula 2000.
Really? I
So,
mean, not
because
counting those sequels.
everything has been, vampire and not Dracula. So, I mean,
I'm
it
looking
is.
that up right now because I believe you, but I need proof.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because 10 or
That sounds
15 years, that
crazy.
is a long stretch without, a single Dracula film.
Let's see. Dracula 3000. There was in 2004 a futuristic adaptation in outer space. Van Helsing, which is sort of.
Yeah, the trivia page on IMDb for Dracula Untold says this was the first big budget solo Dracula film produced by Hollywood to be released theatrically since Dracula 2000, 14 years earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and you are. Yeah, that is totally right on.
Right. I mean, everything has been vampires, but
Yeah.
nothing has really, addressed like the king of vampires,
Yeah.
Dracula.
And when Dracula has had a movie, it's been more of a low budget, it wasn't given a major studio release. And yeah, I'm not going to count Van Helsing because that's a that's a movie with Dracula, but it has like a bunch of other characters in it too. So that doesn't count. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. I also rented the Thing, the new one.
Oh,
To,
the sequel, but not really sequel, or is it a
yeah,
prequel or
I've
not
seen it
really?
before, but I was kind of just looking for just like a solid movie to watch. It was like I knew it would be pretty good, and yeah, I wasn't really wanting to put anything on the line today. On putting anything on the line this week because I've already got a big stack, and I was like, I just want to play it safe, pretty much.
That's fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of Draculas and vampire films, one thing I've noticed within the last 10 years, once Twilight hit, there seems to be a very big, and I don't know if this would technically classify as horror or if it's more supernatural, but a lot of horror films geared towards the young adult crowd. Like they're
Yeah,
trying to tap into that Twilight audience. What do you
yeah.
think of that? Is that do you find that as a positive thing or a negative thing?
I mean, I don't know. Part of me is like, yes, any movies that have to do with any type of horrific elements are good. Because I honestly believe that horror movies are the best genre because you get to see so many different aspects, or so many aspects of movie making are shown so prominently in horror films. Like makeup, I
Mm-hmm.
think is
Yeah.
done most finely in horror movies and suspense.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't
That's
really,
I was about to say that's one of the biggest things I liked about It Follows was the suspense that was in that film.
right. I mean, you don't see suspense like that in any other genre. And that, I mean, this is strictly, the Gorehound likes this. It's not, this is what good movies are made of. It's
Right.
strictly what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the makeup, the suspense, the thinking, oh gosh, this could happen as soon as I turn off the DVD, or once if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm gonna be thinking, oh my gosh, what could be out there? And it's exciting. Like in a romance, like it's great to watch a romance. I love movies, but they just don't give me the same feeling
Mm-hmm.
that horror movies do. So I feel like I just went on a tangent there.
No, that's fine. I totally get what you're saying.
Oh, the Twilight series.
Yeah.
So yes, it's good that anything involving vampires or zombies is good because I would much rather watch, a stupid vampire movie over a stupid romance movie any day of the week. So
It's funny you mention that because a lot of people look at vampire films, especially Dracula, right or wrong, but as a almost romantic film as well, because there's that idea of romanticism
right, right,
that the
and
the
yeah,
danger,
and
like
it's
Dracula is like the original bad boy. Even though if you ever read the actual book, he comes across as a sexual predator and rapist. But in terms of the film adaptations of him, there's that sort of that bad boy Zeke that women are drawn to.
mm-hmm.
What about changing gears here? What about this has been popular, I'd say, the last 10 years, but its origins can be found in the late 90s. Found footage.
Oh man, what do you think of them?
If done right, I think it could be effective.
Yeah,
Uh,
what's your
but
favorite found footage?
um,
Yeah, I don't think I have any either.
yeah, I mean, I think it can be an effective tool.
Oh wait. Wreck.
Okay.
First Wreck is fantastic.
I never saw it, but I saw the American remake called Quarantine. It is wretched.
Yeah, pretty much nothing else to say.
Yeah.
Besides, steer away.
I think sometimes people don't know how to use found footage correctly.
Hmm.
And what do I know? Like the Paranormal Activity series has been doing it for 6, 7 years now. When that series start? Late
Oh yeah. I mean,
2009, I think. Right?
first Paranormal Activity. I mean, it was so cheap because yes, that was. I don't know if they even had a film crew, but that looked like it was just a handycam camera with
Hmm.
a couple that were just having a good time.
And it gave it more of a realistic sort of flair
Oh my
to
god!
it.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the scariest movies I've seen. I mean, I was up for 3 nights after that because it was like,
It did its job well.
yeah, and nothing really does it.
So I think we need to mention one other thing here with the found footage stuff. We talk about the film that kind of started it all, the Blair Witch Project. So what was your thoughts on the Blair Witch?
I think a lot of people either loved it or hated it. Nobody really had no opinion on it, but I think the majority of people didn't like it. My issue with it was that you really didn't get to see the Blair Witch.
Hmm.
Um,
At all.
right. And when I'm watching a horror movie, majority of the time I really want to see the monster. For instance, in the movie Darkness Falls, the Tooth Fairy horror movie, in the production phase, I was so excited because I thought that this was the first time that we were really going to get to see, a monstrous Tooth Fairy. But when that came out, it was so bad. The Tooth Fairy was absolutely awful, and I was so let down. Because I didn't get to see the monster. I mean, suspense is fantastic,
Hmm.
but when you're watching a horror movie, we got to see something.
You need that. You need that reveal.
Right, like in Signs. I think Signs is one of the most suspenseful movies out there because you're constantly talking about these aliens, and then in a few of these scenes, you get to see them, and it makes up for it.
I think you bring up an excellent point in a lot of these films where there's a monster or a killer or mostly a monster, I guess, that's stalking the people in the film. You do need a full reveal at some point, otherwise people are gonna get let down.
Right,
Let me ask.
unless it's like intent on it, because there was what was it? Midnight Meat Train, Clive Barker's Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper.
Oh, okay.
This movie was all about suspense about these creatures that are in a subway, and you never get to see them, but it doesn't really matter because that's not the scariest thing.
Mm.
It's, something else that you don't need to see, these creatures that are attacking everybody. It's something else. And it plays well when the story isn't focused completely on this monster. But if the story is, then show us.
I think it could be a big double-edged sword sometimes with that. On
Mm-hmm.
one hand, I think you do need to see the monster, but on the other hand, I think if you show it too early, people aren't going to be afraid of it.
Oh, yes,
The
certainly.
movie Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien, does a very good job that you see flashes of the monster, but you don't get a full reveal of it until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it works into that film's benefit because, and this is the trick, in your mind, if you have a monster and you're only seeing glimpses of it, it's scary because your imagination is way scarier than anything any movie company can come up with. And
Right, yeah, because I mean that's what horror is. It's not knowing what's in the darkness.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if you have a monster and the monster looks stupid, like when revealed, then you're going to lose your audience. I remember
Hmm.
there's a story. I know this technically isn't a horror film, but the Predator, the
Yeah.
first one with Schwarzenegger, that the original design for the Predator was, I guess, laughable.
Yeah.
And so they were working to like the 11th hour to come up with a design that they felt would be good.
Hmm.
And that's a tough thing for filmmakers because you can have a really awesome looking monster like the Alien or the Predator, or I'm sure there are others, but of course I'm blanking at the moment. But then you could really fail and have something that looks just laughably stupid and no one's going to take your film seriously.
Yeah, for instance, like Pumpkinhead.
Hmm.
Pumpkinhead is this awesome monster, but I mean, there's so many movies of it, but it's revealed way too often, and you get to see this monster in like full light and like see everything about them, and it's just way too much exposure for this creature, so that it looks like a guy in a costume or like a robot. And I mean, it shows because the movie is besides the first one, all of them are not very good.
I think you mentioned something. I think that's interesting. Sequels to horror films are rarely, in my opinion, as good as the initial installment.
Hmm.
And I think part of that has to do is that, all right, we know the monster, we know the
Yeah.
killer, we know their deal. Yeah, we want to see more, but it's not as scary, it's not as intimidating because you know what this thing looks like, you know what this thing does. People may not be as enthusiastic about it.
Hmm.
And I think it's rare where a horror film sequel, does as good as its predecessors, and that's
or
unfortunate.
or lives up to what it was because
Hmm.
I mean in Nightmare on Elm Street, you certainly see different exposure levels of Freddy, but
Yeah,
it's in a different light. He's become more of a I don't know.
he becomes more of a comical character.
Right, and as the audience we accept this and we're
Hmm.
like, okay, we can roll with this. We've seen what you can do. Show us what else.
Because you mentioned this earlier, because we live in a world of remakes and reboots, horror films tend to get this a lot because there's a lot of horror films from the earlier years or horror film concepts that get rebooted or updated for modern times. The biggest ones, obviously, you got your Draculas, which there tends to be a new movie about that every
Hmm.
couple 10 years.
Hmm.
And now we're seeing a lot of reboots from the 80s, like you had a couple years ago, the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, which apparently
Yeah.
is they're working on another reboot of that. What are
Oh,
your?
really? Another reboot?
I thought I read something that they're trying to make another reboot of one of those two. I can't remember which, but
Yeah.
what do you think of the more modern interpretations? They bother you? Do you wish they wouldn't remake them, or do you
I
just
mean,
not care?
yeah, I remember you were saying, I mean, all these horror movies are simply like remakes of books or stories beforehand. So originality kind of isn't all that original. It's not an issue because if you're pulling from good stories, it works.
Do you feel sometimes they might be, especially in terms of your more popular characters like Freddy and Jason, that they're too faithful or too holding of what came before instead of making something completely new with those characters? Jason X not counting.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Um, it's really well, I don't know if hit or miss is the right term. It could be good, it could be bad, and we've certainly seen the result of it. The new Nightmare on Elm Street I felt was awful, but the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre was phenomenal. Gorehound's opinion only. So yeah, I mean, it goes to show exactly the ability of a filmmaker. It's not just, oh, I'm going to remake this film. It's about, I'm going to remake this film with my talent.
Hmm.
And if you're talented, you could really do wonders with it. So yeah, I mean, I've got no argument with somebody wanting to remake a film.
I don't either. I think if the film is good, it's good, and
It'll last.
yeah, it'll sit next to the original one. If it's bad, well, it doesn't take away from the original one. With some films, every generation has their own Superman, every generation has their own Frankenstein. Why can't every generation have its own Freddy or own
Right. I
Jason?
do wish, yeah, I mean, look at Spider-Man. I mean, we've had
We've
3 different Spider-Mans in the past 5 years or so.
it's ridiculous on that one.
So yeah, but I mean, I feel like he's a very unique case where there's like a new Spider-Man every week.
Yeah, that's definitely its own sort of
Um,
thing.
I want to see like a different monster, because I want to see more icons
Hmm.
that are coming about. I mean, I feel like Jigsaw
Yeah.
is really solidified in the horror genre.
Oh yeah, I'd say Jigsaw is the last real horror icon.
Right. And there's another one. Actually, I'm gonna look that up. It's the person from Hatchet.
I am unfamiliar with the
Victor
Hatchet.
Crowley. Victor Crowley is kind of this some hillbilly deformed son that has grown up into this beast of a guy that basically goes slaughtering around in the Louisiana swamps. I love this guy and I want to see more. There's been 3 movies and they're all fantastic because there really hasn't been. I mean, there's been Swamp Thing and Man Thing, which has been in the swamps, but not a whole lot else, I feel. I mean,
Like that setting hasn't been utilized as well as you think it can be.
right. And he's in this awesome opportunity where he, fully exploits it. So, let's start seeing the 4th and 5th Hatchet series. Or, Victor Crowley goes to space or something like that. Bring it on.
I feel like you raise a good point in that you have Jigsaw and this Victor Crowley, but beyond that,
You're not seeing a whole lot of new icons that are
no,
coming.
you're not. And you had the big series Paranormal Activity, which we discussed earlier. There's not really a monster in that film.
Hmm.
It's supernatural element, but there's not like a signature like that character defines that series.
Right, a cover image.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like I saw, if you go into like your average Walmart and they have the Halloween series DVD set, you have
You're gonna
Michael
see
Myers'
Jason, or
mask.
you're going to see the mask on every cover.
Yeah, because that's instantly identifiable.
Hmm.
Paranormal Activity, if they have a box set of that, you'll have like a grainy video image, and okay, that tells the point, but it's not exactly the monster or the thing to be afraid of. But
Right, right.
and it's unfortunate that is the case, but I don't know. We have a new decade coming up. We're midway through the 2010s. Maybe they'll have something new.
Yeah.
I want to sort of change gears here briefly and talk about horror on television because
Yeah.
I feel that within the last 5-10 years, there's been a bigger move to have.
Yeah, dude, Walking Dead,
Yeah, you have Walking Dead. You had the Bates Motel,
American Horror Story,
American Horror
which
Story.
people keep on raving about, and I have not seen it yet.
You had the Hannibal TV series, which
Yeah.
I guess was recently canceled. Things like The Strain, and
Yeah.
it's apparently Friday the 13th has a TV series in development. Oh, I wonder how that's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
But
I've actually been watching the original Friday the 13th series. I believe it's on Amazon. Have you heard of that?
like
Like
it's
the
like
90s.
the anthology series or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever watched it.
My gosh, they're so bad. But it's easy to zone out too.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I'm the Gorehound. I feel like watching these, I learn more.
Do you
Oh,
do you think that these horror on television it takes away from horror in film, or do you think it's a nice complement to it? Because obviously we can do a lot more on TV than we could in the past.
yeah. I mean, we're seeing a lot more TV series coming out now. Netflix and Amazon have their own TV series,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I don't think that they've released any movies yet.
No,
Uh,
not yet. But I know they're in the process of doing that.
So yeah, I mean, people just have. I mean, I'm not criticizing the American cinema, but they have short attention spans, and if a horror TV series is the way to get to the American audience,
Hmm.
So be it. It's not my preferred method of watching it because I want my horror movies to be as long as possible.
Hmm.
Um,
You love lengthy films.
oh yeah, yeah. It's because if it's good, if I'm watching a movie the whole way through, I'm enjoying it, and I'm gonna want it to last longer. Do you watch any horror TV series?
No, not really. I was curious about the Scream TV series because I've heard a lot of mixed things. I know you're not a fan.
I watched it. It was in between the time that we were moving. So we were spending about half of our time at my parents' house who had cable, and we like watched the pilot and we're like, all right, well, let's stick through this. And it was just, another MTV teen drama.
Mm.
But then I watched actually the original Scream, and I realized that you really don't get to see what's his name or his informal name.
Ghostface?
Yeah, Ghostface. You really don't see Ghostface a whole lot.
No, I think that's one of the things that makes that film in particular, work.
Right, because my issue with the TV series was that, it's just a whole bunch of teens. I want to see this new rendition of Ghostface.
Hmm.
And then I realized, it's kind of keeping in line with the
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 movie?
movie. Yeah.
I watched the first episode or two of Hannibal, and
Yeah.
I could not get into it. I thought it was so boring.
Yeah.
Which I know the internet has now just shunned me because how
Yeah.
dare I don't like Hannibal. And I also tried watching Bates Motel, which I just couldn't get into. But
I haven't tried that one either.
I'm glad there's an audience for it. I'm glad that some of these horror television shows are getting decent budgets.
Yeah.
Like Hannibal, even though it wasn't for me, you could tell like every dollar was spent well. And
Yeah.
I've heard it's an expensive show. So I'm kind of glad that those series are doing well. Even The
hmm
Walking Dead, which I'm not a
Yeah,
fan
dude, six
of.
seasons.
Yeah, it's doing well. It's a costly show, but you could tell where the money's going. I've seen a couple of episodes here
Yeah.
and there just by watching if my bride to be is watching it. I don't know. I'm glad it's like you. It's another way to get horror out, and maybe that'll lead to other things.
Yeah, I mean, because I've read the comics, and the comics were fantastic. I
Oh,
mean,
of Walking Dead.
yeah, high quality, just really good read. Yeah, bringing up horror comics, I read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Uh,
Okay,
uh,
how was that?
it was one of the first real, I don't know, it jump-started something. I think it was like jump-started me into comics.
Because that was a novel originally before they
Yeah, it was a
adapted it.
novel. I tried to read that. I couldn't get into it because I liked Pride and Prejudice, and it was very difficult to get through. But I was like reading it because some famous author said like the way to a woman's heart is through Pride and Prejudice. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I just couldn't get to it.
Mm.
But the comic, it was so awesome, and from there I wanted to read more, and so I read the Marvel Zombies.
Oh yeah, that was a really popular thing.
Yeah, and that actually got me hooked into Deadpool
Mm.
and just comics in general. So I was really happy with that.
What about you've read the bunch of Evil Dead comics, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, I've got very inconsistently. I've got many because I just pick up a whole bunch and but yeah, yeah, and I feel like that's where the new series is going to pick up is with the comics.
Kind of like in that vein, sort of.
Yeah, because the comics, they're like I remember them going like all into all these different universes, through all these different lines, and hooking up with all these different people. And I feel like that's what the new series is really going to focus on.
I hope to watch what's it called, Ash versus the Evil Dead or Ash
Yeah,
versus the Army of Darkness, whatever it's called.
gosh, so excited.
I'm looking forward to that. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it because I don't know if I get that channel, but
Yeah,
hopefully it'll pop up on Netflix or pop up on some streaming service shortly after it airs because I want to check it out. I'm enough of a fan of the Army of Darkness series to see this, and the previews look pretty funny so far.
okay, yeah, it's airing on October 31st on Stars.
Yeah, I don't know if I get. I have to go look that up if I get
Yeah.
stars. Well, Gorehound, what do you think? You got anything else to mention? We've talked a lot about horror films. We were kind of all over the place. Anything
Um,
worth mentioning? What
yeah,
is
what movies are you going to be watching this week, coming leading up to Halloween?
this week? That's a great question. Obviously, it's the aforementioned Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah,
I would like to try to watch that, since you reminded me, that Dracula Untold. So
yeah,
hopefully that's available on Netflix. I'd like to watch. Every year I see this at Walmart, and every year I don't get it because it's not on Blu-ray, and I'm kind of going Blu-ray exclusive now with my future purchases.
yeah.
But I love that they have like they call them legacy collections of like the whole series of all the Frankenstein films
Yeah.
from the 1930s, including Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a nice little touch. But I'd love to watch like either The Bride of Frankenstein. I love that film.
Yeah.
My favorite horror film of that era is Dracula's Daughter, which is a film that no one remembers, but it's a great film. But I don't know. Hopefully, I could check out one or two of those during this week. Will I have time? No. In a perfect world, I'd like to do that. What about you? What's on your agenda to watch this week?
Well, like I said, I rented Dracula Untold and the new Thing. I'm gonna get watch those two, but I've had this stack of movies of my own movies that I've been wanting to watch, and I'm kind of like I'm on the crunch, and so I really have to decide what I really want to watch. It'll be tough to figure out what I want to watch, but I know I'm gonna watch those two. I'll likely watch Elvira, Mistress of Darkness, and Chud 2. Because those are just so much fun. And I watched a movie with Lisa the other day, and she couldn't really handle it very well. And so I'm trying to keep it more horror comedy, not too serious. Like I wanted to watch Red State again, Kevin Smith's Red State.
Oh yeah.
But I don't really know how she would handle it because it's religious horror, but it's not really. There's not too many intense scenes. I mean, they are intense, but you don't really see a whole lot of like really really bad like torture or any like rape or anything like that. It's more of just like a whole bunch of people screaming and saying no. So those two, and pretty much anything else that I see that really grabs my attention.
I should watch the greatest movie of all time, Ghostbusters, this week.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It's not weird, but it's interesting. That film, it's a horror comedy, which is a real difficult thing to pull off.
Yeah.
And the original Ghostbusters is amazing that they're able to pull it off the way they can.
Yeah.
For the record, that's my all-time favorite movie, hands down.
Actually, I just saw a new trailer. You know, leading into the next 2 months, Christmas-themed horror movies are so exciting to me. Because they are such a unique blend of two holidays with one, of course, Halloween dominating over Christmas. And I feel like Krampus is the next big thing. There were 2 Krampus movies out within the past few years, and both have been just like not even worth thinking about. And I just saw one today that was so exciting. So I'm really looking forward to that one, and I'm gonna actually try to see that in theaters, even though I say that about so many movies. And I think the last one I saw, I can't even remember the last horror movie I saw in theaters. But hopefully this will be it.
Well, okay, if you end up going to see Krampus,
Yeah.
let me know, and I will be happy to come see it with you.
Okay.
And then we will do a podcast on it.
A post-movie podcast?
Post-movie podcast.
Very
I know,
good.
generally speaking, our sort of unofficial rules for the podcast is we typically probably won't do films that are out in the theater, but I have a feeling that we'll be the only 2 people actually seeing Krampus.
Yeah.
So I think we could, avoid that rule. And it could be since we're doing like a Halloween theme episode, I think eventually we need to have a Christmas theme episode, and that could be our Christmas theme topic. So if that happens, we will do that.
Right. Hopefully somebody to hold me to it. And I've also been trying to see the new Poltergeist movie.
Oh yeah, that looked interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have very high thoughts on it. I'm pretty much expecting a 3 out of 5, and if I get a 3 out of 5, I'll be pretty happy about it. But yeah, I've been really looking for that one because, like, Poltergeist, that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and I'd like to see it. I mean, Zelda Rubinstein was so awesome in that, and I feel like the girl from Insidious is the new Zelda Rubinstein. Are you familiar with Zelda?
Just from Poltergeist.
Okay, yeah, yeah, but you know who she is.
Yeah. The not older, but older woman.
Oh, yeah, with that awesome voice. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, she's awesome. Um, but no, anything else on your mind?
No, I think we kind of exhausted everything out.
Yeah. Until next time, that is.
Yes, until next time when we
Yeah.
have the horror podcast part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Freddy's Revenge.
Jigsaw in space.
Jigsaw in space.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't try that yet. Oh, they will when they reboot the Saw franchise, because you know that's going to happen.
Yeah, dude. So I can't remember the last. Was it Jason the last person that went to space?
I think it
Or
was,
no?
yes. Well,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
Leprechaun in Space, the greatest Leprechaun movie ever.
yeah, but no, no. Back to the Hood.
Back to the Hood. Oh, I stand corrected, yes.
Best Leprechaun movie ever.
Is that number 4 or 5, or
Uh,
does anyone really care? Does it make a difference?
I know. There's no Irish, or there's no Saint Patrick's Day horror movies except for Leprechaun,
He took me
and,
gold.
and so yeah, it's the fifth one is Leprechaun in the Hood, and the sixth one is Back to the Hood, and then the seventh.
So they
one,
had like 2 movies where Leprechaun was in the hood.
yes,
He had so much business to take care of. He had to go to the hood twice.
and then the seventh one is the newest one, Leprechaun Origins, with WWE superstar, whatever.
So they had to do a prequel after he was in the hood.
Yeah.
Well, I guess once you're in the hood, when you're a leprechaun in the hood, that's really as far as you can go. So you might as well go back to the beginning at that point.
Yeah, because he was in space in the fourth one, so like he's gone everywhere.
Oh my god, I'm just looking this up. Like Leprechaun Back to numeral 2
Yes,
Ta
the
THA hood.
Yeah. Well, I am ready to close this out unless you have any.
Nope. What's your final deep thought for our audience tonight?
Watch more horror movies, even though everybody says how awful they are. See for yourself just how awful they are, and then come to realize how great they actually are.
All right.
All right. Well, it's been good talking with you, Nick. And until next time, we are the All New Culture Cast. Have a good night.
Later, everyone. You've been listening to the all-new CultureCast, where every episode is all new. Check out our blog, Zach and Nick's CultureCast, at znculturecast.wordpress.com, and find us on social media. Send us an email at nick.culturecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and requests. Theme music by bensound.com. The all-new CultureCast, a saltwater production, copyright 2015.
Get this. My grandparents actually bought cable TV just for The Walking Dead. Yeah, they are further into the series than I am now. Because I stopped watching after the second one. Like, they're ahead of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'm going to get back into it just to,
How old are your grandparents?
Oh, I'm not good at that. They're old.
It's funny because you don't hear a lot of people who are older would be into horror, or maybe it's just my own stereotype. I don't know. Interesting nonetheless.